questions. So this event that took place on Friday, December 10th, was a student walkout of roughly 150 to 200 students who left Revere High School at the end at 1 o'clock and proceeded to go to City Hall, and then they returned to Revere High School. And I met with the students of the walkout, and they shared with me a variety of very important concerns and issues and topics that they demanded there be action regarding. And I would like to share with you what I know of how this began and how it sort of played out, but more importantly, where we are going with this and how we want to address it. I first want to share with you what was posted. And the first time I had heard that there was a walkout plan was from this posting that I'm going to share with you right now. And the posting was posted on social media, and it was shared from a variety of sources in a variety of formats. But basically, as you can read, it is a walkout against rapists and rape apologists. And some bullets asking students, have they been silenced by Revere High School? Has a Revere High School student staff outside of or inside the building harmed you? And did you go to RHS staff reporting your assault? Instead of protecting you, they chose to protect the perpetrator. And this is a call to join them to speak up for sexual assault victims and survivors, and that Revere High School has not done everything in their power to silence. And this was shared. I first received word of this roughly 36 hours before it actually took place, maybe 48 hours. And like most of the things that that shared with us in social media, we were really unclear on the degree of interest or understanding of really where this was coming from. And well, we did understand where it was coming from, but we didn't know how many students were planning to be involved with it. So we really weren't clear on those pieces of the puzzle. So I want to go back, and there's a lot of things I can't really share due to confidentiality, but I can share this much with all of you, that our understanding is that this initiated from a student incident, 2 students, that was addressed with care, sensitivity, and following every ethical and legal responsibility of Revere High School. This incident was shared with multiple state agencies, including the Revere Police Department and the DA's office, where an investigation was initiated. And our role as a high school in this situation, due to the fact that it took place, the incident took place outside of school hours and not on school grounds, our role in this situation is to ensure that the students and all students have a safe environment to learn in. By our role in this situation is not to be a judge, not to judge the event at all, but to follow the lead of the state agencies involved. And again, to make sure that these students have a safe place to learn. Unfortunately, this incident sort of took a life of its own due to a variety of social media narratives that throughout this incident, or throughout these days that this took place, and this took place over a 2 or 3 week period, we were unable to properly respond to that narrative. And primarily because this is confidential, addressing it even at this level, or at this point, is not a norm for schools. And we needed to protect and secure the safety of those students involved. So on that Friday morning, we were really unsure the degree to which this narrative had taken place, and that this was now being connected to larger, really important issues in our society. We know that there is sexism. We know that there is violence, sexual violence in our society. We know that this has grown substantially in the past 2 years due to really pushing students out of schools and forcing them to get online more often, to do their to really engage in their education. We forced them back into being online, and that had an impact on students in really our society and community. So these are really real serious issues and concerns that in our how we view this was conflated with an incident that took place. And because of the concerns about how to communicate this to students in a confidential and sensitive way, we were unable at the time to really change the narrative, which caused a lot of confusion for students, for faculty members, and for the community itself. And I wanted to share that with all of you to hopefully alleviate any concerns that you have that we did not address these situations with care and sensitivity, as I said earlier. I'm going to stop sharing this at this time and open this up for any questions that there may be by any of the people who are watching. You are welcome to provide a question in the Q&A section, or even put it into the chat. I'm going to monitor these. I would like to spend about 10 minutes on this topic so we can switch over to the second topic. Not that we could discuss this for a long period of time, but I do want to make sure we are able to cover lots of material. So there's a question about the lack of transparency when it comes to issues happening at schools, such as fights, people trespassing, kids getting COVID, kids walking around with their masks down, and a recent issue of this accusation. And this shows a lack of respect for the community, and especially a lack of respect for all the students, parents, who should be the first to know when any of these issues happen. These issues should be communicated openly and in real time. I want to thank you for that question. I would agree with a large part of that statement, specifically that these are really important issues and that family members and the community members need to be aware of what's happening. And unfortunately, in the vacuum of not knowing what happens or what is happening, it causes increased anxiety and fear for what is taking place. I can share with you as a parent who has kids in schools right now in high school and some in college, that I know how that must feel of not really understanding the degree of what's happening in the school. As I had mentioned earlier, the confidentiality component is really challenging, specific to the accusation. We do communicate as best we're able to in multiple languages daily with families and students, a range of concerns and issues that take place. I can say that this is a challenging time for our school, and there are lots of issues and concerns in our community and in our country. So there is a lot of things that are taking place. Our number one priority is to do as we are doing tonight, to communicate with all of you, to share those as much information as we're able to, but also to listen to questions like this. And so I can acknowledge that we need to do a better job of communicating quick and as much information as we're able to. So thank you for that question.
And John, maybe Ms. Sullivan can speak to a little bit of what's going on with the social emotional well-being of students in terms of some of those pieces that the person put in the question.
Hi. I don't even know where to begin. Okay, so I think if we look at the population that are at the high school, there are a lot of students that already were dealing with a lot of social emotional stressors in their life. And now we move into a pandemic in the last 2 years, basically it's almost 2 years, that has been exacerbated, as well as students are now back in school and being asked to be in a normal school, regular school day. So that's been quite a challenge. So we have heightened anxiety about the uncertainty that's going on in our society and in their world, as well as the adjustment of being back in school and all the other stressors that are going on. I didn't see the questions in the chat. I'm trying.
If you go under Q&A, Peg.
Okay.
And it's actually listed under answered now. If you click on that.
Large number of kids getting COVID, kids walking around school and masked down. It's just a big accusation. It shows a lack of respect. So I mean, I can also speak to, you know, when these issues come up for students in terms of sexual assault or, either it's brought to us, the social workers, or if it's brought to an administrator or a teacher, the social workers are brought in to be a support throughout that whole process.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan.
These are also situations that the administrative team and the school counseling team, particularly the school social workers, work with kind of very much in collaboration and in tandem, where the school social workers are often in the role to be supporting the student, often doing outreach to the family, the individual families, about the needs of students in these different situations, where the administrator that works with that student at different grade levels is the one that often takes the lead on more of the sort of investigative piece, or kind of connecting some of the different guidelines that are set by the state, by the federal government, in terms of how different scenarios are investigated, how they're connected with different outside agencies, whether that's Revere Police, whether that's Department of Children's and Families, whether that is different court agencies that the school has ongoing relationships with. And so the grade level administrator, who's the assistant principal for the class, is very often, when situations like this arise, working very closely with the school social worker for that student, often multiple times a day, kind of communicating with that person to make sure that the student has support, that multiple students have support in these situations, to kind of make sure that our responses are appropriate to our role, and that the school is kind of using the different positions that they have, or that we have, to address the needs of students across the range of things that come up when different situations arise.
And just to add to that, we also collaborate with the outside agencies or community supports that the students may already be connected with, so that we're all working together to support the students around their needs.
And I'll go back to a point that Dr. Perella made in the beginning of his comments, that we're not decision makers in these things. We immediately involve the authorities and the experts who know how to work with any sexual assault victim. And one thing I'll say is the Revere Police has a police department, has a great group of officers who specialize in this area. And even though they're not school resource officers, they've been hugely helpful when a student discloses that they've been sexually assaulted. They come in and they know how to do forensic investigations and really work with the student to make sure they're safe and protected. And we do the same with DCF, especially if it's a student who's under 18. I don't know, Jorge, if you want to add anything to that from your perspective as an assistant principal. And you are on mute.
Dr. Ortega, you're on mute.
It's not as simple like share openly with the community. There's privacy issues and privacy rights that all parties are entitled to. So we need to keep that in mind, and as you said, let the experts take care of it, and be the judges.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge, though, it is a real challenge that we have to find a way to thread the need to support confidentiality and the sensitivity on many of the topics we're talking about, as well as continuously share and engage the community so that they know what's happening in the school. And that's a real challenge for all schools. And one of the things that we are dedicating ourselves to right now and throughout the rest of this school year and moving forward is to further engage with all of you and to continue to have these conversations and address specific concerns that are in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have one more question here. And then I would probably switch over to the next topic. Reads, first, thank you for having the forum and for committing to an ongoing dialogue. This is from Don Martelli. I should have addressed the names of this. Is that correct, Dr. Kelly, if using submission? All right. And the last question was anonymous. As a parent with 2 kids in the school, I truly appreciate all your efforts in regards as well as educating our children. Question, if we hear of situations such as the one we're discussing or other important issues, what's the protocol for alerting the school? How else can parents support the school with these issues? Thank you. So this is something that we're very fortunate to have constant communication with parents, and many of the things that we find out about concerns about students come from parents. We do have, in fact, something took place today where we got some great information and helped us support a student who needed help. And this is a topic that also came up in one of my parent forums in, I think it was November, where families were asking us, and guardians and parents were asking me, if we know the information, then we can have discussions about the topics as well at home, because right now most parents are feeling not aware of all the specifics of what's taking place. So I would say that the best thing that we could do is communicate, to email each other, to call us if there's a concern or a topic. I'm going to provide a list of emails at the end of this conversation, but as hopefully we are always open for meetings with parents and family members and guardians. If there's any information you need to share with us, please reach out to us. Any questions that you have, any of these topics or the topic I just mentioned, if a parent had called me, I would provide the same information I'm providing right now. Unfortunately, that's more challenging. And as we know, and what we're going to talk about in the next topic, social media drives a lot of the narratives in our community. And the last question I want to address this is from Edith Rosario. Perhaps have more open forums as these already scheduled. Those are needed to allow Q&As and open communication. And I agree 100%, Edith. Thank you. We will.
And I'll just say for the rest of the folks that are there, if you prefer to speak your question instead of typing it, I know if you're like me, you maybe don't type so greatly. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we can bring you up to speak your question if that's more comfortable for people. And I'll just take a quick look at the attendee list, Dr. Perella, while you go back, and I don't see any hands up, so.
Thank you. The next topic, which of course is connected to what we already spoke of, is social media. And this is an underlying concern in really all of the interactions that we are seeing happening in school, and many of the concerns that we are addressing tonight and seeing play out in schools. As most of us probably lament, social media and the misuse of social media presently is a true crisis in public education. I have linked, and I hope you were able to see in the chat, I've linked this entire presentation for you to see, but there is a link here from a quote that says more than half of US students surveyed agreed that it is tearing us apart more than bringing us together. And this is something that drives many of the problems that we have and amplifies many of the problems we have. And if we go back and think about the past 2 years, this is something that children, unfortunately, are using much more often today than ever before. And there are a few different concerns regarding it. One, the content itself. As many of you also know, there are, at this point, monthly social media posts that are typically from different parts of the country and shared throughout the country that are very vague and speak of violence happening in schools. Violence in schools is a concern for us and will always be a concern for us. But these social media, the equivalent of a bomb threat that is taking place through social media now, is destabilizing school systems throughout the country. And what takes place is something is posted and it is then taken and shared, and students add components to it. Sometimes they add a school or a district or a name. And what happens is we get that information and we have to then follow through on following that trail of who spread it, who shared it, and where did it initially come from. There's also concerns about targeted threats or targeted use of social media. Presently at Revere High School, and I say this at Revere High School because it, of course, is not at the building, there are between 10 and 30 Instagram sites or handles. I'm really searching for the proper term here, pages probably, that students can create, and then they can range from shoes of Revere High School, where there are pictures of students' shoes, to rumors and basically calling out and spreading lies and tearing students apart. And we see this daily. We see students coming into our offices because their names are attached, and somebody who anonymously posts something is able to just really, it must feel like it's destroying the life of these students, as well as educators, as well as community members. And this is something that is impacting our school. It is driving anxiety and fear. It is happening at a speed that we are unable to keep up with. The minute we find out about these sites, our first step is to contact Instagram and request it is taken down. That typically takes a little time to do. There are protections that are in place now for these social media sites. Police do not have the ability to just randomly look and find out who are posting these things unless they're very specific to a type of threat. By the time we do get them down, and they do come down, another one pops up, or really, I would say another 5 pop up with a different name and a different angle. But unfortunately, they all typically end with people getting hurt in a very painful experience. This impact, I don't think we really know what the impact is. I think it's going to be years until we understand and appreciate the damage that unfortunately our children have suffered, and our whole country has suffered, in communities because of this phenomenon. We do know it's ubiquitous. I speak to principals, over 20 principals I'm in routine contact with, and we share the same concerns. Exactly. Each of these schools has between 10 and 30 different sites that pop up that wreak havoc in their school. And these sometimes lead to fights that we have no idea why the students fighting. It's because of things that are posted and shared. And I think back to when I was a student, that most of these things, all of these things weren't there, and it probably allowed us to get over situations and move forward, whereas these things are posted and they are kept and shared and out of control, pretty much. So I wanted to point out that this is happening in our school and throughout the country, and this is something that adds to our disconnect with communication. It is challenging to keep up to this with the speed of the events that are taking place, especially through social media. I have been informed by students that they don't read email, and most of my communications is through email. And they will tell me, I don't want to use email. If you want to communicate with me, you're going to have to find a different form. And this is really the world we're living in at the moment. So I want to.
I think that this is a topic, John, where we could really use some advice from parents on how they would suggest that we communicate about that.
I'm going to bring it back to the panel. Thank you, and open this up for questions and any points any parent or guardian would like to make regarding this topic, and as well as the panel. If there's a panel member who would like to share anything, please do.
John, can I just like to say one thing about the kind of the bullying aspect of some of the social media, because I think if we go back 10 years, a lot of the cyberbullying that happened online was very direct from student to student. You could identify which student was saying what in what forum and kind of follow up. And luckily, at least in the state of Massachusetts, the law caught up with that and allowed school administrators the ability to investigate those things and work with students and families. And I think the struggle that I, at least personally in my role, am in now is the same level of meanness is often brought through Instagram and through these different sites to students. Yet there's a level of anonymity here where we don't know who has created the account. There can be multiple people that are all logging into the same anonymous account, posting different things. There have been many situations this year that I've been involved in where students whoever has created the account has shared the password and the username to that account. And once that's out, anybody that has seen that is able to sign on and just kind of continue until that account has been reported and is taken down. And like you said, that takes time. And so I think the thing that I personally struggle with and just want to point out is, unlike 5-10 years ago, there's this anonymous aspect of who is doing this, and the law hasn't yet caught up in the way that it did before to let us work with these agencies or these corporations rather. And you see that it's at the level of the United States Senate right now. There's a lot of work that the Senate is doing with these organizations about bullying, about the impact of social media on teen image and on self-image and all of that stuff. So I think we're in a challenging space, but to me, it's particularly because of the anonymous factor of what's happening. It's very, very rare that a student from their own personal account will directly say something about another student or about one of these situations in a way that it can be taken back to them. And so I just think that that's a worthwhile thing to think about here as well.
There's a question in the chat from Linwood Hopper that asks, what are we talking about? Threats against the school building? Other? It is hard to follow without some specifics. I would say that it includes all of those. There are threats. There are the general threats, such as there's going to be violence at a school, or there's going to be a shooting.
Like last Friday, for example, there was the thing that went viral. I think it was on Snapchat, not on Instagram. I forget. But somebody posted create violence in your school on Friday, December 17th. And that was shared. Oh, TikTok. Thank you, Kayla. That was shared across the country. And we found out about it from the Massachusetts State Superintendent's Organization. And it was actually a national organization that helped craft the letter that we sent home to families on Thursday. And if you know families in other school districts, they got a very similar letter because it came from a national level. But there were kids all over the country sharing that TikTok message. And it's like Dr. Perella said, no specific credible threat anywhere, but still absolutely scary. And we have to respond and make sure that we are protecting all of the kids and making sure our buildings are secure and responding that way, even though there's not a credible threat.
And I would there are two participants raising the hand. I'd like to add one other example. About 2 months ago, we received a photo that was shared by students that said there's going to be a shooting. It was something written on a wall. That student was a Revere High School student who shared it. And when we got a copy of that, we spent about 4 hours looking through every room in the school, trying to find if we can identify that writing in that school. In that room. And we ended up finding out it was taken in New Hampshire. But because of the way this information is shared, it creates fear. And that's ultimately the goal of why people do these things, is to create fear and disrupt. And unfortunately, that's what it does. I know there are two participants with their hands up. Diane,
and just while you bring them up, John, I'll say that the bullying of kids to each other is equally as harmful, and we spend just as many hours every day trying to help kids navigate that. And I know Dr. Ortega and Mr. Bowen deal with that probably the most, but also Ms. Sullivan, who has to help the kids navigate the emotions of that after the fact. It used to be, when we adults were children, or at least people my age, I'll say, if you were having a problem with a classmate, it ended at the end of the school day, and you could go home and be with your family and have some sense of normalcy. Kids today don't have that opportunity. It's in front of their faces 24/7 on the weekend, all the time. And, I just can't even, we can all imagine, we see it, how much more harm that can do when you're just faced with that bullying all of the time. And so I don't know if Jorge or Chris or Peg want to speak to that a little bit.
I was just thinking that the head of Instagram was in Congress 2 weeks ago. He was brought in to testify because of the damage to the mental health of teenagers caused by social media, and specifically Instagram. And there's still, we feel impotent in addressing this, or very limited. I shouldn't say impotent completely, but very limited in issues and needs of our teenagers, of our students. So this is ongoing. This is still evolving, trying to find a solution and support for what's going on right now with social media.
Yeah. And so I'm going to bring up Ina and have her chat with us for a minute. Ina, you might need to unmute.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Perella, and the whole panel. Thank you so much for putting this meeting together. I think it is important that we really work together to try and, make our community safer, and especially our schools for our kids. I just wanted, I know Dr. Perella mentioned earlier something about communication and students, putting resistance to, you said, email, that they would not want to communicate through email. I just wanted to say that please keep pushing, because I think that if this generation want to find a job, they would have to get used to email. And I think it's something that we have to push them. They're going to have to get used to it. My daughter is very resistant to it, but I think this is what we do. We work together as role models and really show them what is best for them, whether they like it or not. So for communication, I'm all for email. And I think at that age, she's a junior in high school. And for her to communicate with her teachers, I think it's the best option, and probably the only option, and she just got used to it. And that's what I'm enforcing at home. And I hope that other parents will do the same. When it comes to, for me, the big issue is really the use of cell phone at school. Is there a policy? Could they put their phone down to focus, listen to the teacher a little bit? I feel like when my daughter was in elementary school, there was a policy about cell phone use. You get to school, it's in your backpack or it's in your your closet or whatever. I forgot the name of it. It eludes me right now. But you don't have access to it the whole time that you are in school. And I feel like now they have it from the moment they arrive to the moment they leave. And I would really love for the school to have a policy to make it known to the students and the parents and to enforce it, whatever it is. Because for my daughter specifically, even at home, for her to sit down and do homework, I have to take that phone away. So I know that if she has it during the school, then I know she's probably not doing what she's supposed to. And then she's late on her work, and then it shows in her grade. And I just don't know what to do at this point. I can control what she does at home, but if the school could be a little more strict about the cell phone policy in school, I'm all for that. And yes, so those were my 2 comments for tonight. And thank you for everything. And I'm always here, to help and facilitate, between the community as a parent. And thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate all of your hard work. John, you want to take a jump at sharing that policy?
Yes. So this is something that I think if you had asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have probably answered it very differently. I've come to better appreciate the concerns with cell phone use with our students. And I've seen it through parenting, where I've seen my son put his cell phone under his pillow, and their attachment to cell phones. And I think, unfortunately, the past 2 years has grown significantly, and because of the needs of communication. So this is something I really would like to engage the community with, because it's not something I think the schools can regulate on their own. I think it has to be done in collaboration, and because there are also lots of family members that have expressed a pushback when we try to restrict students' phone use. And really, another component of it is a lot of students use these as they are computers, and they use it for class material. But I do, again, want to say I am equally concerned and worried about this generation and their unfortunate addiction, as well as my own addiction. I have to, I find myself constantly looking at a phone and almost as sort of a calming mechanism. And I have to remind myself of the why that's concerning. And I think, unfortunately, that students, adolescents have grown up with these things in their hands. So I look forward to engaging with the community in that topic.
And just the current policy for the elementary and middle school kids is that they're not supposed to have their phones out at all during the school day. For the high school, there is a little bit more flexibility. The policy is that they can have their phones at lunch and in the hallways, but we definitely see that they have it far more frequently than just at lunch and during passing, without a doubt.
And I think part of that is that they use it. There are a lot of students that use phones as their main computer. And we do have all of our learning networks online now. So students check their schedules. They have appointments set up through this. They can jump on Zoom classes, Zoom opportunities on their phones, and they actually use it to access schoolwork. So it is complicated. However, it is a concern that I think we need to. I would love to work with families to sort of figure out how to tackle this together.
Okay, and I think I brought up Mr. DeChico as well. He had a hand up. Ralph, if you want to go ahead.
Good evening, Ralph DeChico. Thank you for having this forum. Well needed. Hopefully a lot more parents will start getting involved in them, especially since you have all the interpretations available. A couple of questions. Social media is one of the biggest downfalls, not only with the school department, but with the world in general, as we know. So it's not a school issue. It's just it's the world around us issue. A couple of questions I have that lead to other issues because of social media being a big part of it. And there's a couple of questions that I have and a couple of concerns that I have that go part and parcel to the social media. Number one, you see the issues with false, we can call it false violence advertising on social media, but we can't take everything as a non-threat. We have to take everything as a threat. But my concerns is because I was really involved with the elementary schools before, and I know that we did have active shooter drills. Now we've only had fire drills. We really need to get to the fact that we have active shooter drills in one of the things that I hear thrown around. Well, the students are going through so much traumatic experiences, but we need to be proactive. If something does happen and nobody knows what to do, then it's going to come down on the school department and school systems that these people are not aware of what to do. Not only the students, but the administration, the faculty. If not doing it with the students, then with the PD development days, then we should at least have the training for the teachers on knowing what to do. Because as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time we did any active shooter drills was 2018 or 2019. So that's a big concern. You always want to be proactive and not reactive. So that's something that needs to be done. The other issue that I see is at the high school level. I'm not in there physically, but I know because it's been spoken on a lot of the meetings that I'm on with Dr. Perella on Wednesdays and a lot of other ones, that the roaming of students in the hallways, whatever happened to the time is if you're not in the classroom, you should not be in school. That you're causing more problems for students that can go onto social media with bullying. Kids are in the classroom, could be walking by saying things to these kids that are in the classroom. If you're not in a classroom, you shouldn't be walking around the schools. That's causing issues. That could cause issues with with threats or whatnot, and to make sure not knowing who's supposed to be there or not. When you're going to school, you should be in a classroom or going to a class. You should not be able to walk around the campus. And it has nothing to do with your rights or your freedoms. You're going there for an education. There are students there for an education. You shouldn't be able to come and go as you please and decide what classes you want to go to. Everybody, once you enter the building, you're there from the time you start to the time you end for schooling. That will stop a lot of issues with some bullying and anything like that, because we all know some of these kids are on social media. Oh, the student's in here. Let me go on my phone. I know what class he's in. I see them in there. Let me start doing some bullying on the phone. Let me make some loud comments because I know he's inside that classroom or her in that classroom. And this causes an issue. So that is another concern, that if we want to stop the bullying and whatnot, there shouldn't be anybody walking around when classes are going on. If you're in school, you should be in the classroom.
Thank you, Ralph. So there's two different pieces to that. I want to speak to both of them, obviously. The first being the drills that we have in place. The entire faculty is given, and we do review and emergency planning. It is true there are lots of different types of drills that we are scheduling throughout the year. In fact, our plan is to start to review 2 of the drills upon our return in January: a stay in place and a what's called a lockdown drill. And there's also a few other drills that we will hit on throughout the year, and that's part of our schedule of drills. So I think that is important. I think it's been challenging because there's such a loss of continuity in schools and sort of the routines and practices that usually normalized over the past 2 years that's been broken in our building and in all schools, really. The second piece, which I think is a challenge for us, and I will say it, is that you're right. There are students that are presently, there's a larger group of students than typical that are presently unable to be in classrooms. And there's a range of reasons for that do include heightened anxieties in students, an array of things that they're bringing into the building with them. The good news is they want to be in the building. And the challenge for us is to get them and to ensure that they attend all classes throughout the day. And what we've done, and I can speak to the APs, can speak to this as well, daily we are meeting with students and families to have these conversations. And these conversations take time and they take a lot of energy. It requires that we understand what's happening in that individual student's life. We don't want to resort to direct punishment and suspending students who don't want to be in class and kicking them out of the building for 5 days. Unfortunately, that has happened, and we have suspended more students than I'd like to suspend because of the inability to sort of find a solution after attempting other interventions. So these are real concerns, and I acknowledge them, and I think it's a challenge for our school as well as, I would say, schools, urban schools especially throughout the country. Returning at this time has been a challenge, but we are making strides. We are presenting adjustments to the way we practice what we do to the superintendent's office, working with teachers and students. I have had conversations in the building with students about how do we engage and really get students to see the value in going back to being in class when some of these students don't see any value at all in sort of the things that we assume they should. So, Ralph, thank you. Yep.
Yeah, one of the things I'll add, John, is I think that we've done a decent job increasing our staff to include more social workers and guidance counselors. But what we haven't done well is figure out a way to really put that in kids' schedules so that they can be those kids who are having some, unique challenges actually have time scheduled in their day to do that work that will enable them to get back into the classroom and access the curriculum more fully. I don't know if Chris or Jorge or Peg wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Chris.
I think one of the challenges, kind of the impact on the kind of perception of the community, and when I say community, I mean students in the building, when there are a significant number of more students that are in need of more intense social emotional support that does prevent them for I think what any panelist or any person on this call would legitimately consider struggles that prevent them from being in class for the full length of time that the class, exists. When the number of students in that spot has tripled, quadrupled, quintupled perhaps this year compared to where it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And then the perception, to other students is that, well, there's more people out, there's more people that are maybe missing time, there's more people that are going to their counselors. Kind of how to balance the need to provide students with that support without getting into the details of other students, why some of their peers may be missing class or maybe not there. And I think that's one of the struggles that just speaking for kind of Peg and myself in terms of working with students that are on my caseload and her caseload, there's a building impact that is worth thinking about there as we're trying to discuss and support those students. And so I think for me, one of the bigger struggles is just the scope of the number of kids that are in a spot that, could easily have 3-4 hours of undivided time with different adults in the building, just processing things that are going on and putting plans in place to help support them. And that's a struggle because I think when you get into the details and the nitty gritty of why students are in the spot that they're in now, I don't think there's a person on this panel or a person on this call that would say we need to kind of either ignore that or kind of not tend to that. The struggle is that there's a lot to tend to right now. And I think that's kind of the role that the social workers and the administrators, or at least the assistant principals, are in, is trying to find that balance of how do we hold students accountable and at the same time support them in a way that reflects the needs that they're bringing to us and how they're communicating that to us, which isn't always verbal. It's sometimes by missing class, by walking out, by having those episodes that suggest they can't be in that space. So it's a struggle. It's definitely probably one of the most challenging years in my personal time as an educator dealing with this particular issue. So I don't know, Peg, I didn't want to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to also add to that we also are able to have outside therapists come in and meet with the students during the school day because they're not always able to get to their appointments. It's really easy to blow off therapy. So we have them come into the building so that we can make sure that they get there, and it gives them that 50 minutes a week time with somebody to support them through their week. If they don't have an outside therapist that's coming into the building, we also make a safe space for students to do a remote therapy session with a therapist that may not be able to come into the building so that they also can get their support. And as Chris had said, the scope of kids and the need is huge. So there's 6 social workers just at Revere High School, and we work together to support those kids. And sometimes we put them in groups so that we can find support for more kids at the same. It's a little more time effective, as well as is set up support plans with parents, with teachers, with nurses, with all the other support staff in the building. So we try to do the best that we can to fill those gaps.
And I know for the kids, Peg, that sometimes group is helpful to them because they realize they're not the only person who's struggling in a particular way. And that alone can give them the confidence to overcome. Yeah.
Well, group is a much more effective modality for adolescents anyways, because their peers have such influence on them. So yes, it definitely not being alone. And that's one of the first things that I usually say to students when I meet with them, when they come in and they're like, I can't be here, I'm so anxious, I'm so overwhelmed, and they start shutting down, is that you're not alone. There's most of the kids in this building are struggling, because I think often they think they are alone.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I want to speak to one of the things. Go ahead, Dr. Ortega. My apologies.
I'm sorry. And plus, one of the nice things that I've noticed that quite often many, basically if not all, the social work will only they answer messages or they communicate with families over the weekends. and that surprises me, and it's nice. It's beautiful to see that they're connected with the family. I'm just checking my phone and I see an email coming from a parent, and then 5 minutes later, a social worker responds to that parent on a Sunday, on a Saturday afternoon. I'm like, wow, this is nice. I mean, it's exhausting, it's demanding and everything, but it shows that we are there. We are supporting our families and our students.
Thank you, Dr. Ortega.
I just wanted to share that with the community, with the families.
I'm glad you did. And I can attest to that as well, that this is ongoing work throughout the evening, over the weekends, and that's our responsibility. We need to continue to do so, especially at this time of need. There is a chat here from Lisette Flores speaking about communications and how students are overwhelmed with as many emails as they are getting. And there's absolute truth in that statement. And this is part of the concern, is that as we gone directly and completely now into electronic world and electronic communications, I think there is and I think we all experience it to some degree, but I think students are truly experiencing this overload of emails. And then think about our expectations in emails. We write out this beautiful, eloquent email. We expect it to be read and understood. And then we go on to the next thing we're doing without, probably appreciating the fact that it's a challenge to digest much of the information that is sent out, never mind reading it all. So thank you. I do want to, it is 7 o'clock, and I'm going to go over, and then I apologize for anybody who needs to leave at this point, because we did say it was 6 or 7, but I do want to share a few more pieces of information and open it up to other questions.
And just while you get ready to do that, John, I'm just going to run through a few more things in the chat. Edith had suggested text or Snapchat as a good way to get in touch with kids. So there's that. Let me see. I think there's a couple more. Maria mentioned not allowing her daughter to use the phone when she's supposed to be studying. She's behind limiting phone use in school. Ina mentioned that we should encourage use of Chromebook instead of phones during class. I think you read Lizeth, so I'll move on past that. And then Elena had put a comment in Spanish that I threw into Google Translate. I don't know how good that is, but I'm going to try to share it with everybody. It says the responsibility is not only of the teachers. We as parents have to be more aware of our children, of what they're doing both inside and outside of school, and what kinds of friends they have. That is happening with the social media, is also the problem of drugs and alcohol outside of school and maybe inside of it.
Thank you. And I would say that one of the things I often tell parents the first week of school or the first meeting with parents is that we tend to think that parenting becomes lessened as students become adolescents and adults. And in my experience, the time that students need us the most is in their teenage years, especially in high school, especially in light of all the things that we've mentioned. So I don't think this is the sole responsibility of any one group. I think the only way we can really properly address this is working together, and we dedicate ourselves to work with you as families of these students. I want to just, oops, my apologies. I think I clicked the wrong thing. Let me stop sharing this so I can fix this. I do want to finish up with a few slides here. All right.
And John, I know we're running over a little bit, but could we invite Sandra, after you finish going through these last couple of slides, to just speak? She has I think, a unique lens, being the parent liaison. She's had the opportunity to talk to a lot of families, and I'd love to take a minute to have her perspective here.
Absolutely. Can everybody see my screen again, the social media screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the next steps, and this is important because it's really not much of a big deal if we're just acknowledging these situations. We need to do something about them. And our view of the best way to do this is continued communication and collaboration with you, and then action. We're going to continue our monthly community meetings. Unfortunately, through the winter, we are going to have to cancel the in-person one due to rising COVID rates. We had in the past done a in-person, which I prefer, and a Zoom. Beginning next month, we're going to be in the Zoom only. And the next one will be Wednesday, January 19th. And these are, again, I want to really target these to address specific community issues and not general discussions. I will continue, and we will continue to engage students, and this is a critical component of this. The students are the ones that are pushing for change as hard as any other group. They're the ones that are experiencing this anxiety, this fear. They are the victims, unfortunately, of what's taken place over the past few years. And as a school, our responsibility is to not only teach them, but also to support them. We will continue to meet and brainstorm with the student leaders. We are calling for athletic captains, group and extracurricular activity leaders, and our student elected officials to be meeting with us. And we're going to continue to do so to address the big topics of the school, and then provide action steps beginning in semester 2 and for the next year, as well as the years beyond. I want to just again open this up for any additional questions. These are emails of individuals on the administrative team at the high school. Please, if you don't know them already, feel free to communicate with any and all of us with any topic or any question you may have. This is our responsibility to work with you.
And John, these emails are on the district website as well, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So Sandra, can I pick on you for a minute to let us know kind of what you've been hearing from all the parents that you've been working with regularly?
Sure. Like as a parent liaison, I'm here to bridge the communication between school and home by helping parents get the information they need. I had many parents concerned about their child secure in the building, and I did talk to him and address every single issue directly to Dr. Perella. And I do support them. Like I just answer in the text one of the messages saying one of the mom that we all need to work together. And I did answer saying, yes, this is a teamwork. By all of us working, we're going directly to the success of the students.
Thank you, Sandra.
That's a perfect point, I think, to end on.
Right. So if there are any other questions, I will answer any if there's any at this time. We have gone past our time limits, but that was my responsibility there, and I didn't allow any extra time for questions. To echo Sandra, I honestly think that the only way we're going to even dent this issue, and it's a big problem in our society in really supporting our students, is if we do work together. And that's something that I'm sure as parents you have heard and probably questioned how serious we are regarding that. This is the only way the only way I think we can get out of this together is through working together. And that has to be genuine. And that requires that we listen to you and you listen to us, and we work together with the students that we have and the family and the children that we have. So I want to thank all of you for tonight's attendance. Please email me directly if you have any questions or would like to have a meeting with myself. I would be happy to have any Zoom meetings with any individuals at any point. So please request that if you have interest, as well as anyone on the panel. These are experts in the field, and I appreciate their dedication and hard work. Dr. Kelly, I want to thank you again for supporting this conversation. And I hope if I don't get a chance to communicate this to any of you, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks, Peg and Chris and Jorge and Sandra and Safa and Kayla and Carolina for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.